I'm Mara Webster with Welcome to the Stage, and today I'm so thrilled to be joined by Anthony Frith to talk all about his documentary Mockbuster. And what is so unique about this is you're making a documentary about the process of making a feature film. So in essence, you're directing two films at the same time at the first
Yeah.
time that you're making your first ever feature, which is
Yeah.
quite an impressive feat. And I was really, really curious at what point you realized that was going to be the scope and that there was a documentary story to tell on top of just the experience you were having as well.
Yeah, yeah. Straight away. It was kind of like the same thought where it was, I should, it'd be great to make a movie. I should ask the Asylum if I could make a movie. And I'll make a documentary about that too. So when I initially reached out to them, it was kind of folded into that same conversation of like asking if I could and then being like, and I want to make a documentary about it. And they were like, yeah, sure, great, let's do it. So, yeah, all in the same, the same bad footstep basically led into this.
Do you feel like in a weird way it's kind of given you this sense of, you know, I don't know if audaciousness is like too much of a bold statement, but just the fact that you reached out and you were like, hey, I'd love to direct one of your films. And they went, yep, absolutely. Just in terms of the way that you think moving forward and the types of projects that you might try to pursue.
Yeah, that's something I've always kind of done. Just like asked people for things that I wanted, whether it was like, just saying hello to someone I admire, or like asking someone for a screener for a film that wasn't released in Australia. Yeah, I've just always kind of been bold enough to be like, you know what? The worst that's gonna happen is they're gonna like just not reply. And in the Asylum's case, I thought they just wouldn't reply. So yeah, it still shocks me that they said yes. I laugh about it sometimes that this whole thing happened purely off me just asking the question. But yeah, I think this is the sort of world I like being in when it comes to stuff I make, like that sort of like yeah, I'm a big fan of David Farrier, who's an EP on Mockbuster. Just like he finds a seemingly innocent rabbit hole and then finds the depth of it, and I just love that style of documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. And especially with the Asylum, the fact that you reached out to them as a company who kind of advertise themselves as intentionally making quote unquote bad movies, but that's actually what makes people really love them and connect to them. There's a very specific tone to it. And obviously you'd seen a handful of their films before and kind of been a fan of what you'd watched because you
Hmm.
enjoyed it as well. As you kind of got given that massive stack of dozens of extra DVDs to watch a whole lot more, what were the main components that was really helpful in teaching you about, or that you started to kind of connect as common threads amongst more of their films?
Yeah, I think one of the things I realized pretty quickly, especially when I got that one pager, was that each of their films are structured in 8 acts because they were made for TV. So they built them in 8 acts, so they had a cliffhanger before an ad break. So you start to realize that each film is actually sort of like 8 sort of 8 to 10 minute chunks, and it kind of helps you work out structurally what the film is. Like Light would always say, you see the dinosaur every 8 minutes, or you see the monster every 8 minutes, and that's what gets the audience through and excited about because they know that that's going to come back again. And then you start to see the way they shoot them is very sort of like rudimentary. It's like wide shots and close ups, and there's no real mid shots or ultra wides, and very rarely drone shots unless they're kind of stock. Um, and then each scene's kind of, if it's an interior scene, there's lots of haze to make it kind of look cinematic, so the light kind of reflects the haze, and there's like very sort of like, it's very sort of like pretty sort of typical cheap low budget sort of filmmaking, I think. And then they even kind of gave me a list of rules to follow while shooting, which kind of confirmed a lot of the stuff I thought, like the wide shots and close ups and the haze, and the camera's always kind of on a slider moving, so there's never a static shot, stuff like that. So it's just like, yeah, just really sort of base cinematic language that you can do for you know no money and no time, basically.
I mean, one of the things that's very unique about the style of filmmaking and the way that they approach it as well is the use of locations. It's, we're on a beach and we're going to act like there's a giant submarine over there, but there isn't. And maybe
Yeah,
it'll be added to VFX later. So it's kind of conjuring these really big scopes of world for the audience, but by
yeah.
filming it in really tight close-up shots and just like you're only going to see this much next to the actor because we can't build that. And what was that like, kind of diving in and discovering that aspect?
Yeah, that was weird because I'd never really done VFX shoots before. So getting like you're kind of imagining the sort of like layout of a place, like the spatial, um, what do you call it? Like the spatial awareness of the actors. Basically, we're trying to build that. Like, okay, the submarine's like here somewhere. There's a dinosaur up there. It was kind of weird. It felt like just like being a kid, just playing in the mud, sort of pretending these you got this big world being built and stuff, which was kind of fun in its own way. The thing that was tough was finding locations that could, because I think in the script there was like 40 or 45 locations, but we only had 6 days, and when you're shooting 25 pages a day, you can't really move location partway through a day. So we had to find like a single location that could be like 8 locations. So it's like, okay, here's like deep woods, here's creek bed, and yeah, so that was kind of tough. And then having to remember all those very specific, because sometimes you're talking about like an area that was like 3 meters long that you just needed one shot in, that had to act as like a forest or a jungle or something. But we're in a pretty dry climate here, so jungles are far and few between. Yeah, that was tough.
In a weird way, you describing that, I almost wonder for the actors if it's kind of like an opposite Marvel, because obviously, making gigantic, huge budget films in front of a green screen, that
Yeah,
actually
true.
about how little you have. And this is a very different version. So did you kind of see the actors having to like really conjure a lot of creativity on their part as they were coming in to shoot scenes as well?
Yeah, I think the actors kind of like got it like wholly. They were kind of on board for the ride, and I don't think they. I think that the most issues for the actors just came from the amount of script they had to remember per day. But like the worlds and stuff, they seem to have been fully sold on. It's just the sort of like techno babble and in the script, and sort of the absurdity of the script, and then like just how many lines I had to deliver in one take was where the struggles came from, I think.
And also because we see in the documentary as well, there's a lot of last minute script changes.
Yeah.
I imagine that beyond even just what we see of like how that, throws the actors through a loop to have to kind of navigate through that, that it also, for everybody, there's kind of a ripple effect on the entire crew. For you as a director, what were the biggest implications that you consistently felt when there would be sudden last minute massive script changes or things like that?
Yeah, it was because you had no time to prepare. So like you get to read the script once basically, and then you're on set and you're trying to like pass the script as you're trying to like give, re- remain confident enough for the actors to trust you that you know what you're talking about, and get them on board for the script too. So that was quite like difficult, because I think I can't remember the exact timeline because it was like a year ago now, but it was like we shot the Monday, I think, but we got the script the Saturday or something like that. So there was like really a whole day, but during that day I was like at the studio helping put the set together, and like things like that. Um, so yeah, you're trying to like give the actors motivation, or like places to stand and stuff like that. But then as you're reading the script again, you realize that like those beats have been removed or replaced with something else, and then you've got to really think quick and like how you can remedy that while still not seeming like you're an idiot. Yeah, it was tricky.
I mean, it's so wild to go on a ride where you basically get the chance to read the script once and then you have to dive in the entire film in 6 days. But kind of while you were waiting for that final version of the script, during that pre-production stage, even though it was so brief, what were the components that you felt were really important to try to set up for yourself, either logistically or even just mentally, the preparation that you were going through as well?
Yeah, I don't think I was ever mentally ready for it. Like the whole thing terrified me from, you know, David Blatt telling me what the film was until the screening. I was just like shitting myself the entire time. Um, I think getting a submarine set, or like, was the big one for me. Because if we didn't have that, then that was like quite a large portion of the film that had to be rewritten or like rethought. But it was so integral to the the plot, which is hilarious. So I was reaching out to like different commercial like cruise ships and seeing who was going to be in Adelaide if they're doing repairs, where we could just like go into their engineering room for the day and stuff like that. A friend of mine shot a film in a submarine, which the submarine was just a water tank, like a rain tank that he built under his parents' veranda at the back. We tried to use that, but it was tiny. Um, yeah, and then the John, the guy who owned the studio, reached out and said he's a big fan of the Asylum, and saw my Facebook post trying to find cast and crew, and offered his studio for quite cheap. So that, we were so lucky with that. But then casting and crewing was the next thing. So crewing was like, it was easy in some ways, but hard in some ways. So Adelaide's quite a small industry, so there's not many people here, and a lot of people thought that it was a prank. And were writing all these messages being like, are you crazy? Like, there's no way you're making a film in 6 days if you don't have a script, especially. But then a few people realized that the Asylum were like a legitimate company and started to come on board. But that sentiment of it being a prank remained the whole shoot. Like, I'd say like half the crew thought that it was just like a prank show and we were screwing with them, even though we had this other film being shot. And casting was the other thing because the Asylum are used to like putting a casting call out and having 200 LA actors apply. We put a casting call out and had about 30 actors apply for everything. So they at the end of the day, like the process was that I choose my top sort of 3 or 4 and send them to the Asylum, and they choose from there their picks. But their picks obviously came like on the Thursday before we shot, and a couple of the people were from interstate, and we're like, oh, we can't do it now, and we had to, Brendan had to get on his you know, producer hat and try to convince them that they should just do it and commit. So there's a lot of sort of tricky things to get into place, but yeah, cast, crew, and submarine location were the 3 things I really wanted to lock down as soon as possible. But yeah, a lot of things were out of my hands, unfortunately.
I mean, you mentioned Brendan, who's a producer that you worked with, who has worked with the Asylum on many films and kind of like knew
Yeah.
all the bolts of how they work. And we see elements in the documentary about some of the things that he really helps you navigate or troubleshoot that are
hmm
so specific to the Asylum. What are some of the elements that maybe there wasn't enough time or it didn't make sense story-wise to include in the film that he also kind of like really helped steamroll into production or into the final version of the film for you?
Yeah, so we ended up shooting in a lot of national parks, and in Adelaide, I think it's like a 6 week turnaround to get like permission to shoot in the national park. But these parks are incredible, like the cave, and they're like look incredible on film. Brendan was like, we need to shoot in this park, but we need to shoot next week. He was like calling all these people and like, if we can't sort this out now, I'm gonna have to call your boss. So like, because again in LA it's just like you click your fingers and you get what you want because they're so film literate there. Whereas here it's a bit slower and more laborious, and there's like things you have to kind of cross. So that was probably the main one. Just him trying to navigate the national park system here. Um, Otherwise, the budget was a big thing, like negotiating money with actors and crew. Like the award rates were paid, because we got like the union's kind of baked into the industry in Australia, so we have award minimums that just like need to be paid. So they did that at least, but just kind of explaining that to people that like this is because you say studio and everyone's like oh, you've got $5 million. It's like, no, we got like 80 grand. So yeah, just negotiating that with people. Trying to think what else. There's a few other little things. I think the national parks was the big one though. Him just, I think there's an expectation from him in the Asylum that like there's the whole costume thing. There was a costume in Sydney that they really wanted, but it was like it's going to take 5 days to get that costume, and by that time it's going to be the last day of the shoot. They just would like, we want this costume, we should get it. Like, why are we not getting this costume? It's like, well, you can't really do that. Why can't you just drive to Sydney? Well, Sydney's a 30-hour drive. It's like, this is a big country. And they're sending me some locations that were like 6 hours away. Like, oh, this would be great to shoot in the Flinders Ranges. I'm like, that's probably a 6 hour drive, and then we're going to have to house everyone. you know. Yeah, so things are just lost in translation to, the sort of size of Australia, the sort of the culture here too is very different from LA, especially in Adelaide. I think Sydney's probably shares a lot more DNA with the LA industry, but Adelaide's quite sort of slow. Yeah, that was most of it, I'd say.
And you very realistically kind of show the frustrations, the tensions that come with this sort of filmmaking process. But at the same time, there's a really lovely camaraderie of how everybody comes together. There's a moment even in pre-production where, one of the crew says, to you, I'm more upset for you because I know this is important to you. And I thought that was such a lovely sentiment. It's like, I'm upset on your behalf because I know that this really, really is meaningful to you. And, how did that really become such a formative part of the experience for you along the way?
Yeah, it was nice. It was I think Aaron like got it. Like Aaron's a big B movie Asylum fan too, so he got wholly what I. Oh, sorry, he got wholly what I was trying to do. He understood it like in his core that like making this movie was the right thing to do in some capacity. So that was kind of nice. And he's got quite experienced in that sort of world too, the genre like sort of fast turnaround film world. So that was kind of nice. When it clicked with crew what we're actually doing, and they got over the idea that it was a prank, I think they understood what was kind of special about it. Like it was the first Asylum film shot in Australia. It was something. I think they also just appreciated the documentary and understood how special and interesting that documentary component of it was. That it was so sort of bizarre, like such a bizarre sort of thing to do. And I think what most people kind of really loved about it was just the story of making a dinosaur film in 6 days, and just how kind of funny and surreal it was to be shooting like a dinosaur film in like Tea Tree Gully, which is it's a very small suburb. And then I think that's when people started to really come together. That it was just like, okay, this is the thing that we're doing now. But at the end of the day, we're going to get this really funny, weird, silly movie and a story that we can just tell. And we've also seen the depths of like hell on set, and we should every production after this should be much simpler.
Right, because there's the point that someone makes at one point about that actually not everybody can make this style of film and this budget and this time constraint because you don't have money to solve it. It's like you don't have time and you don't have money, and usually you have to choose between one of those. But when you have neither, how do you kind of dive into that problem solving when it's like, we don't have the usual things available to us, so how on earth are we going to figure out the way over this mountain together?
Yeah, I mean, on production, I think we solved a lot of those issues. Like, because there's not many things that you can forecast in pre-production for this style of shoot. Like, so we were thinking on our feet a lot. And Aaron and I quickly decided that, for example, instead of getting the perfect take, we would just get lots of coverage. So if we got we ended up shooting with two cameras. So if we got a wide shot, and there was some flubs in there, line flubs, and whatever else in there, tech issues, how to focus for a second, we're like, well, let's just like make sure we cover that in the close up. So we'll just keep moving the camera around rather than just getting everything perfect, which I think allowed the editor to cut a lot of the sort of like tech issues out. I wish I kept a couple more sort of like line flubs in there just because it's really funny to me. I love that stuff, but that's my fault. So I think it was trying to deal with things on set. You couldn't be preventive. You had to be reactive, basically. And that was difficult because it's really exhausting, I think, to work that way. And it's also it just chews up time because you do have to take that 30 seconds out to think where you could be shooting another page. Yeah, that was probably the big takeaway. Just being really sort of like on it and reactive, which hopefully don't have to do again. Hopefully I'll get more pre-time next time.
It's probably the one style of filmmaking where you have that level of intensity and you get exhausted, but you can go home and sleep on Sunday because you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a 6-month-old kid too, though, so I just didn't sleep for like a week.
Also, when it came to making the documentary, because as you were saying earlier, that was always the intention from the beginning as well, that you realized there was a great opportunity to tell that story at the same time. And, you're now juggling two different crews and kind of like splitting your brain into two places.
Hmm.
Obviously, didn't really have much pre-production time for the documentary either. But like as you were kind of diving into it and looking at what's the scope of what we want to show, we have to bring people in and kind of explain the asylum to them and all of this world. I want to show them a little bit about my background, why this is important, and how this relates to audiences and filmmaking. What was your starting point for just finding that general scope of all these different stories that come together in it?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. We kind of, I kind of had a treatment written of like the basic sort of beats, but with documentary, you kind of throw that stuff out pretty quickly because you realize that real life is inevitably much more interesting than what you can conjure up. So there was a spine there, like a loose spine, which I think is still prevalent in the final film, just in its own way. We kind of, yeah. What did we start shooting? I think the first thing we shot was in LA. From memory, we might have shot a bit of stuff around my house just to kind of get that sort of like the context. But yeah, we headed to LA. This is basically the second we got finance. We called the asylum and were like, hey, like we're ready to go. We're coming in a couple of weeks. Like, yeah, sure. And we just flew over and started shooting all that stuff. A lot of it came together in the edit, I'd say personally. Like, I didn't expect the asylum to be that way. I guess I thought it would be more like they straddle this line of being like dismissive of their work, but also being kind of in love with their work. Like it's I think I expected more sort of like more commerce and less art, but there is a sense of them like they are actually capable filmmakers. Dave Latt had directed a bunch of films in his when he was younger, and he was actually like a really talented guy. And they talk about their films with such like loving, starry-eyed views, and I didn't expect that. And I think that warmth kind of reflected what I wanted the film to be, because I mean, I always thought it should be a fun, friendly, warm sort of like film. But then when I got that sense from them, it was even more apparent that that's what it needed to be. So a lot of things kind of changed after those sort of initial interviews and talking to some of the people around the asylum, where they all laugh about it and they all joke about it, but you can tell that they love their jobs and they're proud of the films they make. And even on the other end of it, like I'm really proud of The Land That Time Forgot. And not that I'd show everyone, but like there's a special place in my heart for that film. But yeah, I think that kind of spoke to the film a lot, and ended up becoming like kind of the spine of it.
I mean, even just what you're describing about how they straddle this space of like, being able to laugh at themselves and kind of make fun of themselves, but then also having a real connection and love and passion is so evident in the conversation where you were asking them, well, why did you say yes to me directing it? You get everything from, well, because clearly you have some mental problems, but we get a film out of it. Well, you clearly have a passion for this and you're interested in it, and you do a great job. And like that's very sincere and very silly at the same time. And
Yeah.
did that just like sense of their personalities, how do you feel like that played into the way that you then were able to direct the film yourself, as you kind of like immediately saw this is the tone of who they are as people, so like now I think I get it.
Yeah, they got that, but they've also got the edge. Like, this is what I want, and this is what it needs to be. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like, they've got this very set criteria that you need to adhere to, or the thing is, like, even if you try to push with an asylum film and make it your own, it always comes out as an asylum film. Like, there's so many moments we shot in The Land That Time Forgot where I'm like, oh, this feels like something I would make. Like, this is so like really special, and then you watch the final cut and it's just completely gone somehow. They just like somehow make that footage work in their own way, and that's why all the asylum films have this very specific tone, because they're kind of siphoned through the three guys. The edit's kind of taken away from you at a certain point, and then it goes through the ringer of them, where they watch it all together and they note on it and iterate a couple times until it's like the asylum film and not the like the Anthony Frith film. Yeah, so it was weird because we did try to push in certain things and make things a bit sort of goofier and funnier, but those edges are filed off pretty
Yeah.
quickly. So yeah, but there's also the expectation that you're making the film for them, and it needs to be this specific way. Like, they sign off everything. They sign off all the costumes. They sign off. There's some shots they wanted to sign off. Like, if it was like a wide shot, we had to send them a photo of it. Be like, is this fine? Like in the submarine, for example, so they could see the set dressing. Yeah, they've
I
got
mean,
their
as
fingerprints all
you
over it.
said that, I was wondering, because obviously you have a background in making corporate videos pretty extensively, and in essence, when you were describing that, I was like, they're the client, so
Yeah,
they get to dictate and say this is how we want it. Did you actually find, in a weird way, there were sometimes more similarities between the two than you expected because of that?
yeah. Yeah, totally. We were talking about putting it in the doc a bit, but it felt a bit too dry to kind of like feed that in. It was more fun to just be in the asylum world. But yeah, it was like totally like that, where you get these notes and you're like, but you know, you have to
But
do what
we
they
have to do
want
it that
sometimes.
way.
Yeah.
What were some of the most beneficial tools that you felt like your experience in corporate video making and even the short films that you've made with friends over the years really gave you for coming into this world and being able to jump into it the way that you did?
I think the short films were probably more beneficial. Just in that we when I was at film school, my friends and I we got together and we made basically a short film every week, just for fun, just to put on YouTube, and we'd shoot like a 6 or 7 minute short film in a day, um, and I'd just kind of edit it over the next week. So I was kind of used to shooting quick and fast, but that was like it's different because I was shooting everything myself. Whereas with Land of Time Forgot, I had a crew of like 40 people. So things are slower because you have to wait for lighting and sound and da da da. But it was just that working on the fly, I think, was kind of really instilled in me, and something that I could kind of call back on. And Josh, who was in those videos, was also in not off March. He's only in a few shots in the Land That Time Forgot, and it was kind of like I don't know. We kind of had like a knowing nod to each other, knowing that we've done this before. It's fine. Yeah. For corporate, so I think it was just following a brief because they get the one pager, and the one pager is like you have to hit every beat on that one pager completely, or the Asylum have technically not fulfilled their obligations with their buyers. So they're really strict on like you have to have this dinosaur attack, and this character has to be named this, and this scene has to happen, or you're in trouble. Yeah, so just having to follow that brief to a T was kind of something that you do in corporate videos too.
Yeah, no, it's a great set of skill sets to come into an experience like this with, and it was so fascinating, kind of being introduced to the world of the asylum and just seeing what that experience was and all the conversation around it. So, congrats on both of your feature films at the same
Thank you.
time and everything that's come with it. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you.